we've got this concept that we call support and challenge, basically. And what it basically says is that some people are great at offering support, but they don't offer challenge. Some people don't offer neither. Some people are great at offering challenge, like high expectations, accountability, but don't offer support. And actually leaders who are effective, leaders who liberate others, they have a means of offering both challenge and support.
When I was looking into your background, there was something that I thought was quite profound to start off with, which was, let me get that up. It was a comment, I think. Yeah, here it is. You had a realization when a friend asked you an innocent question. And I'm guessing that happened in your youth.
Yeah, it did, yeah.
Yeah. What was the realization you had? And how did that shape and put you on the path that you're on now?
Yeah, no, there's a variety of contributing factors that have put me on the path that I'm on now. But I think with that particular conversation, it's actually when I was in secondary school and I wasn't the smartest kid, like, as a secondary school student. And to be fair, from primary upwards. So we were in an RE lesson and a good friend of mine, like, he nudged me and goes, like, randomly, he goes, James, how much money does your mum give you for school each day? And then I worked out at that particular point, I was thinking like year 10, year 11. So it worked out at approximately about £5 a day, basically. Because you used to get a day bus pass, I think they were £2 and then like £3 for lunch. So then when he asked me that, I started to add it up. So I was like, okay, approximately, like, in a week, that's £25. In a month, that's £100. Span of a year, that's £1,200 approximately. And then I times it by 5 and it was like, that's about 6K. And then that was like just, you know, food and travel. It wasn't my, like, I don't know why, but you know when you're in secondary school, everyone thinks they're gonna play for Arsenal, so like you're slide tackling in your uniform. So I went through so many shirts, so many ripped trousers, wallabies. So I just started to add it up, and I was like, you know, single parent household. So I was like, I know I'm not the smartest kid in my school or whatever, but this has to make sense. So I think that moment, honestly, was like quite significant for me, because it was like, it's almost like the penny dropped that, you know, my mum, she had invested in me quite significantly despite circumstances. And again, like, I wasn't the brightest spark, but I was like, I have to make it make sense after 5 years, basically. So it just kind of got me doing things slightly different in order to try and get different results. But yeah, that would be the question. How much your mum give you for school, basically?
So that question sort of set you on a path of wanting to go into entrepreneurship then, wanting to better your life and
yeah, entrepreneurship wasn't even on the radar like that at that particular point, if I was to be honest with you. I think it was just a matter of just, I guess at that point in time, it was just like past school. Like, it was just basic. It was like, I was about 15. I wasn't really thinking about entrepreneurship massively, although there was definitely seeds of it around that time. Like in our secondary school, we had a booming industry in the playground for selling things like triples and like biscuits and cookies and donuts, and it was quite a broad market, you know. And I did get into that market space as a secondary school student. And I when I look back now, retrospectively, I can definitely identify that there was definitely an entrepreneurial like edge to me. Like, so I remember when I said, okay, I'm gonna start selling like sweets and chocolates and stuff. So I remember what I did is I went to, like, in my area in North London years ago in Lower Holloway, we used to have what was called the 99p store, basically. So I got a small bag of like Snickers, or I just went to find chocolate with caramel in it. So I think I got a Snickers, no, Mars. I think it was like a Mars bar in the end. And I was selling them, and I basically said, if you can eat this Mars bar in under 20 seconds, then you get one free. So then obviously people lined up and were like, yeah, bring that. And I was like, obviously you have to pay. So they'll pay for the Mars bar and then they'll try and eat. But the caramel was just giving them problems, basically. And no one was able to do it. And when I look back now, I'm like, okay, that was quite entrepreneurial, to be fair. But at the time, again, it wasn't on my radar. At the time, it was just a matter of like, yeah, just making things make sense, at least academically. Yeah.
That's quite interesting actually, because I feel like in all of the loads of schools, there's always the Del Boys,
Yeah,
the
totally. Yeah.
But there wasn't anyone in my school doing stuff like that.
Right.
Promotions like that.
Yeah. That was a part of the pitch. Yeah.
And then take me back to what the environment was like as well. So you grew up in Islington,
I did,
Andover Estate, right?
Andover Estate.
What was that like? What was the environment like?
I think Andover Estate is like, I can't speak about Andover without smiling. Like, it's a place where I love it. I love where I grew up. And it shaped me massively. Basically, like most inner city estates, you know, you've got a sense of community, a lot of diversity, like a lot of that. So that kind of fosters your ability to relate to all different types of people. And then there's the reality of crime. You have crime that was there, and that was a part of the estate, to be fair. And unfortunately, with the estate where I grew up, it had issues with other local estates, and that kind of peaked in troughs and in terms of how serious that got. But it's a place that I love. It's a place that I love, and I think I'm thankful to God for some of the experiences that I had there, and some of the lessons that I learned while being just growing up on Andover. And then I had the opportunity to serve as a youth worker and a youth minister in the local area for the best part of like 10 years, actually, where I met my wife, basically, doing youth work on Andover Estate. Yeah.
A modern day love story.
Yeah. Something like that. Yeah.
And you mentioned you grew up in a single parent household.
Mm.
So how did your mum teach you any specific like lessons or anything like that? And how much of an impact did she have on you?
Yeah. The Marge was massive. Definitely. The Marge is definitely massive. And in terms of the lessons that she taught me, many lessons, I would say, man. What was interesting was, I think, like just a variety of things. I just think that whatever I pursued, she was behind me. And she definitely had this way of allowing me to feel like I could do anything I put my mind to. And so I would say that was a key thing. And then I think my faith is something that when I was 17, actually, I started to take my faith as a Christian really seriously. And I think my mum played a part to that. Growing up, it's not something I really owned and stuff. You just grow up, you go to church. But I kind of had an interest in sort of like a few years. And just little things actually that my mum would say and do that definitely sowed significant seeds that got me to think and reflect about where I'm at just as a person. So my mum definitely taught me a lot of things, basically, but not if I was to be honest, not very much, not massively explicit, to be fair. They say some things are taught and some things are caught. And so my mum's one of these mums where my cousins call her mum. Do you get me? We have wider family members that call her mum, call her mummy. Do you get me? Not even just mummy. Yeah. And there's the significance in that. Do you get me? In that distinction there. Like, I think, so there's something about just the love and just capacity and generosity, I think, that she demonstrated when we were growing up, that I do think is definitely rubbed off on me. Yeah.
It's quite interesting though, because I feel a lot of the times it isn't necessarily like a one explicit moment you can sit down and look back on and be like, okay, wow, this was the one conversation we had that set me on a path. It's like just over throughout your entire youth, basically.
That's it.
Throughout your upbringing and that. It's just little things.
That's it.
Doing the little things, maybe experiencing love in the way you've experienced love.
Exactly.
Or, little conversations here, little conversations there, little gestures. You come to that realization through your friend asking you that question that your mum is sacrificed a lot and put a lot into you. Really, probably very difficult for her at the time as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think it's a lot of little things that over time you get to a stage and you look and you're like, wow, okay. All of these things have come together into this melting pot in terms of, look, sculpted me into this person I am. And I feel like, well, for you, you sort of like you get to a stage and then you feel like, all right, I've got to do something, that I've got to work and then maybe give back or do whatever I can do. But I feel like it's often a culmination of different little things, and it's hard to pinpoint the one specific thing.
Totally. And I think definitely in my case, it's just a variety of events and experiences, interactions with, family, wider family, the community at large. I think all of these things play a key part, and I think there's value in trying to create space to pause and detect and discern like what you can draw from what's taking place. Yeah.
What was your mum's stance on education? I asked that because you said that you're in school, you wasn't the brightest kid in school.
Weren't, but
you're in this education space.
Yeah.
See, like some of the reason how you ended up in this
like
space.
going through it. Not in this space. To be fair, my mum, I can't lie, this is so weird. This is probably what drove me to want to leave with some decent grade. Because I didn't leave with A stars, but I left with like a few C's and above, to a point where I was able to go college and have a conversation about being able to do a variety of courses, where once upon a time, like the conversation would have looked different. But my mum had this really... So now when we work with staff teams, we've got this concept that we call support and challenge, basically. And what it basically says is that some people are great at offering support, but they don't offer challenge. Some people don't offer neither. Some people are great at offering challenge, like high expectations, accountability, but don't offer support. And actually leaders who are effective, leaders who liberate others, they have a means of offering both challenge and support. And I think my mum kind of naturally did that. And then what was sick is that where I grew up, my aunt lived on the 4th floor as well, my cousins. Yeah. And my aunt also, like, my aunt was more challenged, but it was needed, to be fair. And so I think in terms of my mum's stance on education, it was definitely like, I'm from Ghana, like there is that sense in which you value it. But I never had this sense that like, it was like a game breaker, you know. There was definitely a freedom of just like work out what works for you, but at the same time, just make it make sense. Don't come back to the house and things just, it just don't make sense. So I think there was a balance of push and pull. There was a balance of support and challenge that I think challenged me and invited me to consider, okay, like, what can I do with what I have?
Yeah. I love that concept of support and challenge. I don't think I haven't heard that before, or at least I haven't heard it articulated like that before. But the way you explain it, it makes so much sense. You need a bit of both. You need the challenge so that you don't rest on your laurels.
That's it.
But you need the support to help you to get to where you need to get to.
That's it. You know, it's an amazing company that I'm trained by, actually, called Giant. And yeah, definitely has influenced a lot of the work that we do with leadership teams. With
the support and challenge, how do people, and I know you do it probably in long coaching workshops or whatnot, but in a nutshell, how can a leader, particularly a leader that has maybe working with young people, has working in some kind of organization with a social purpose, and they're trying to move and impact some kind of change within people, how do they do that?
That's a massive question, but a very important one. The reason why it's so important is because, particularly for practitioners that find themselves in a place where there's a social cause to what they do, or maybe they work with a group of people that arguably might be deemed as like disadvantaged in some particular way, what can happen is, if you're not mindful, you can find yourself applying yourself where you're offering a lot of support, but you're not accompanying that with challenge. The sad thing about that, though, is that it fosters a community, it fosters a culture of entitlement and mistrust. It's this sort of cozy sort of culture. And so it's important, like in my youth work days, I used to see it. In my youth work days, actually, that used to be a bit of part of my story, to be fair. And then I had to learn, you got to make sure that you're dialing up the challenge, because if not, you're almost unintentionally inviting people into this cozy, entitled sort of place. So in terms of how you do it, there's a variety of ways. I think one of the ones is being a practitioner that's willing to tell the truth in a loving way. I think that's important. I think it's got something to do with expectations, being clear on what expectations are and holding others to expectations. But another thing that we say when we work with teams is that it can be done collaboratively. So literally, like in a supervision instance or in a management instance or whatever, you could just ask the person who you're working with, what support do you need from me? And then they'll give their answer. Then you can ask, okay, what challenge do you need from me? And then they'll give their answer. And then from the answer they give, you can discern whether or not you think that's sufficient. But at least it's been done collaboratively. they might say, our challenge to me looks like, work starting a little bit later. You're like, that don't sound like challenge to me. But at least you're being collaborative about it. And then you share what challenge looks like and what the standard's going to be. And then you can work out if there's anything that's going to get in the way of that and what you can do to facilitate that happening from a leadership perspective. So I would say collaboratively is key. But expectations, when we work with leaders, one of the key things that contributes to many teams fumbling is not being explicit with expectations or not holding yourself and others to same said expectations. But a lot of it is around accountability as well. Challenge looks like accountability. It looks like the recommunication of expectations. It looks like holding people to deadlines. It looks like stretching people as well beyond what they envisioned they were capable of. And actually saying, you're there's so much more in there that you can actually go on to do. Like, let's pursue that. Let's be courageous and curious enough to actually pursue what it looks like when you're at your best, and holding them to that, I think is what challenge looks like as well. Yeah.
I've got 2 questions off the back.
Go for it.
And I want to ask them both because I feel like I might forget one.
Go for it.
The first one, you spoke about telling the truth in a loving way. How do you do that, especially when it's a difficult truth? Not everybody is comfortable with conflict.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Comfortable with confrontation, even, I should say.
Yeah, it's true.
But you get someone slacking, or maybe they're not doing things in the way you want them done. You want to tell them the truth, but how do you do that in a loving way?
Yeah.
And also, the second question was on the support and challenge part, when you said that you talk to your people and be like, what support do you need? What challenges you need from me? Often what I find, and I'll talk from a personal perspective, is that you don't even know what support you need. You don't know what challenge you need. Until the support is offered, you do not know. Like not everybody, but sometimes I just don't know. I could be like, I'm okay. I don't need support. Until the support is offered, I'm like, oh, right, okay. I didn't need that actually,
Fair enough.
How do you deal with that as well?
Cool. So the first question in terms of what does it look like to communicate truth in a loving way, I think underneath that, a significant factor is the context of relationship. In a team context, another approach that we use is this whole idea of whether you're for one another, whether you're against one another, or whether you're for yourself. And whenever I think of that, I always remember a time years ago when me and my little cousin on the estate were playing Knockdown Ginger. And and I don't know why, but we decided to play it on his next door neighbour's door. So remember, he lives on the 4th floor, I live on the 8th. So we've gone down and he's knocking the door and we're running, I'm knocking the door and we're just swapping. And so where it was is like at the end of the corridor, there was a lift that had broken down, basically. So it was a heavy lift. It was an electronic one. Sorry, a lift. It was a door that had broken down and the door was heavy and it was electronic, but it had busted. So you had to give it some welly, basically. So then I'm ringing the door and then no one's opening. Then he did it and no one opened. And then I did it, no one opened. He did it, no one opened. And then I did it again. But then from nowhere, the owner just swings at me. So when I was knocking the door, there was a whole heap of guy and chess. But as soon as I was like, run, he's coming. So he's chasing us. And then, as I said, the heavy door was there and my cousin was ahead of me. So as he's approaching it, and when these things are happening, it's like slow motion in your life, like you're seeing your life like just drift away. Yeah. But my cousin, I was like, there ain't gonna be enough time for us both to get through that door. But he pushed open the door and then he held it open for me. And he allowed me to run. And then he ran behind me, meaning that the brother that was chasing us was behind him. So I got to the top, we got to the top and we laugh about it now. But it's like, that's something, because sometimes I'm like, would I have held the door open for him? Like he might have. And I guess with the whole for one another, against one another, for yourself, I guess what I'm saying is him holding the door like that, he's for me. He could have pushed the door and left it to close. That would have been him being for himself. Worst case would have been he pushed the door for himself and shut it behind him and leave me with the guy chasing us. That would have been him against me. And what I'm saying is that in order to have these conversations where you can speak truthfully in a loving way, they work best in a context where you're convinced that the person that's line managing you, working with you, is for you. They're not calling you out, they're calling you up, basically. And so I think when that's clear, then I'm willing to hear what anyone has to say when I'm convinced that I know that they're fighting for me to thrive, as opposed to I'm not even sure you know? So I think that's a really helpful way. Another thing is being super specific. I think if we're actually wanting to workshop an issue, when we're clear and specific about what needs to be improved, we're willing to listen about what led to what we've seen, but then we're also conscientious enough to come up with solutions as to what better looks like in a collaborative manner. Again, I think that's, you can only, I think it's hard to take offense in a situation like that, but it still happens. But I think being specific, being future focused, being solution focused, I think those core attributes contribute to speaking the truth in love, I think. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. That was really good, actually, man.
I appreciate it.
And then that's sort of like being a team player in essence, and finding people that latch on or relate to whatever cause or purpose or thing that you're working towards, something that resonates with them as well.
Yeah.
I guess in a nutshell. How do you find people like that? Like people that, for example, with you've I know you right now you're doing the inner scope and you're speaking, you've got a team that you work with,
totally.
or whatnot. I'm assuming, tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming there was times earlier on in your career where you're working with people who are probably working with you on a voluntary basis. And whether that's through your youth work, whether that's through the work you're doing now, I mean, everything is centered around youth work, isn't it? But whether that's earlier, you're doing it now. And then how do you get these people to rally towards you and what you're doing? Maybe when there's other opportunities that might be more lucrative. How do you get those people around you? How do you find them and how do you communicate that vision to them?
I think what's really cool is that where my the work that I do, it is in relation to working with young people, not solely, but working with young people. I think there's just something about when you're clear about what you're about, passionate about it, and when your passion has contributed to practice in terms of, because you're passionate about it, you're willing to learn really well in order to serve really well, then it's almost like, why wouldn't someone want to join if they have a similar passion? Do you get what I'm trying to say? So if you can demonstrate success and if you can demonstrate that, productivity in a particular sort of, field of work, and then your heart behind it is on point, then you will just find that people that match that sort of approach will just, they'll come along, I think,
How did you get into the youth work in general?
It's a good question, man. How did I get into youth work? So, it's a big story, man. It's a long story. I'm trying to, how I got into youth work basically was, so when I was about 16, 17, I was super passionate about pursuing like a hip hop, like UK grime and UK hip hop sort of career. Like everybody was, but I said career.
I saw your videos on YouTube.
Oh, is it? So a lot of the stuff that I was doing was pre YouTube, was pre Channel U. So wherever you can find, I think I came across one of my old clips, and one of the comments was, because I couldn't think of anything snazzy, so my MC name was JA, was my initials, and I see someone in the comments like, something like, you need to go on underground Chinese websites to find JA stuff or something like that in the comments, basically. So it was time ago. I think if I was to pin it down to year, like probably 2003, this is a long time ago. But anyway, long story short, I was super passionate about my music. It's what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, to be honest. And then, as I said to you, there was definitely this instance and a point in my life where, unfortunately, although I grew up in a single parent home, I had a relationship with my dad. So I'll see him I'll spend like summer holidays with him or certain weekends and stuff. And then I remember getting a call from my nephew that my dad wasn't doing too well. And around this time, again, music was my everything. So it meant that, rites of passage, you had to get yourself on pirate radio station. Me and my core group of friends were on a pirate radio station in North London. We were doing like local shows and stuff. And to be fair, around this time as well, we were also talking to a few like labels as well. So everything I could have wanted from a music perspective was actually taking place. But But there was a variety of events that were nudging me to appreciate that there was definitely more to life, to be honest. So not long story short, essentially, I'll go and visit my pops and I see him like with tubes in his through his nose and stuff. We weren't doing too well. And then like, about a few days after that, he passed away. And so that was like really, really significant for me. And I found that in that time, although I had so much identity in how I saw myself as a musician, I found that I wasn't running to my music. I found that actually I was running to God. I found that I was praying. I found that there was like, this sense of like my relationship with God, basically, that became significant for me. So it was around that time actually where I was like, you know what? Like, what was mad as well is there was a time that I was like, I had the opportunity of actually being like an opening act with an amazing beatboxer. This is years ago. An amazing beatboxer for like Ludacris when he came to the Hammersmith Apollo. I think this was like 2005, I think, Hammersmith Apollo. So again, everything I could have wanted was happening, but there was just like a void that wasn't just hitting for me, to be fair. So then for me, that's when my faith actually came alive, where I was like, you know what? I'm gonna follow Jesus, basically. And although there was so much of this emphasis on music, I said, I'm gonna put that on pause. And around that time, my older sister's boyfriend, he was a youth worker. And so he's seeing this whole journey take place and trying to get his head around it. A lot of people like, James, like, what are you doing? Like, you were the next one to. But for me, there was something that I perceived as more valuable than what status and, I guess the aspirations I had at that time could achieve. So it was like, all right, so my sister's boyfriend was like, well, just come and volunteer at the youth club. And like that was just, the rest is history, man. I loved it because I don't know why, but again, I grew up on Andover Estate and I just had such, and I still do, but just such a deep love for where I grew up. And I think if I was to honestly like pin it down to a moment, actually, I think when I was really, 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 really young, I want to say about 9, where I grew up, there was another estate just across the road called 6 Acres Estate. And at this time, both of them had different little cliques, basically. And so there was a gang fight that I saw between the two of them. And it was kind of a funny one. At one point, someone bit someone in the stomach. Like it was funny at some particular certain aspects. But I do remember, and it kind of seared in my brain. I do remember, like I can't remember the whole discourse, but I remember one of them saying, like, talking about like rep your ends. Like but the way how he said it, there was so much conviction, that it imprinted in me at that young age. But I never felt massively compelled to express that in a way where it meant like the typical way of expressing it. So I don't know. That's my attempt to try and pin it down to a moment. All I knew is that there was definitely a time in my life where, as a youth worker, because we had an example on the estate, where as a youth worker, like there was a guy on the estate that was a local youth worker and lived on the estate for years, still lives there now. And I thought that was going to be me, because I had such an affinity to where I was serving and where I grew up. Like, it's an amazing thing to be doing youth work and it's like, I know your older brother and we're here trying to get you a job. Do you get me? Things like that. So that's how I got into youth work. My older sister's boyfriend said, come and volunteer. I started volunteering and I started learning about the craft of youth work. Like, those who know, it's quite sad because youth work does get not a great rep now. But those who do know, there is this art to it. And so I started to learn that. And then I went on to do a degree in youth work at UEL. And then we did a module in mentoring, counseling and coaching. And that's when I discovered coaching. And I was like, no, I love this whole coaching thing. And that was one of the significant things that led to me starting a coaching company today. Yeah.
Wow. Very, wow. I think so. What it's like the two major events. So your father's passing and making you realize, okay, there's bigger things, or the music is not. It's not the thing, you know. It's not everything. It's not your number one thing that you're running to. And then this other incident when you're younger, and the guy say "rep your ends," and probably you looking at that and thinking, there's so much more. Maybe even later on, because a lot of times, you know, these things just seep to your subconscious.
That's it.
You're there and then, and then you just take it on board. You're like, yeah, cool, whatever. And it's just in your subconscious. And later on, maybe we'll take other events for that to bring that back out of you. And you're like, man, maybe these kids need some direction or something. You know, we got to do something about it. And I guess it's that. Along with you just being growing up in your area and that, just all of these things just push you down the path you've gone down, man.
Yeah, totally. When I was young, I used to feel like when I was young, I used to feel like there was a lyric that used to and used to say living on a council estate is fine, but it's a madness if you live with a council estate of mind. And for me, that was inspired by a lot of things. Like around that time, actually, we had an amazing artist called like Skinny Man who didn't grow up too far away from us, and actually had the honor for a little time. Like he took me as an understudy for a short span of time. So that was definitely informed by some of that. But there was definitely this time where I felt like, there were times I felt like, yo, like, oh no, you just kind of feel like where I grew up was very, like many estates, very concrete. It's a lot of concrete. Like, and it's like, you almost feel like, who's gonna do something? Like, who's gonna create opportunities? Like, who? So it wasn't even this sense of like, I know the way I'm going to, it was more like, we're all here. So let's try and make something of the fact that we're here. Let's do something. And I think that was a massive, that was a massive driver for me. And just the reality of how easy, I'm not only that, but it's like, again, when I was doing youth work, I came across this, this theory from criminology called the strain theory. And basically, if I remember correctly, it's from a guy called Aidoo, who basically said that one of the contributing factors or a lens of that which lends itself to delinquency is a removal of a positive role model in your life, like your dad, being presented with a negative role model, and then this feeling that you cannot aspire to achieve the predominant ideas of what success looks like. So I'm like, rah, that's my whole life is strained then. Do you get me? So it's like, right. So when I read that, I was like, yeah. I was like, this is, and it kind of gave like, when I saw that, I was like, it gave language to what was normal for me, my peers. But again, it's like, that can't be the only story. Although we saw many, many examples of that, actually my core group of friends actually were amazing. And many of them doing like amazing things now. And we were all in the thick of whatever, you know. But again, what frustrated me was how easy it was to just end up in all sorts of situations, and how many young people that we would have worked with that were full of all types of potential. And it just because of circumstances, because of decisions that they made as well, whether that was their lives taken or whether that was them making a decision where they had to go away and do time for a long time. And then, like, you know, me and my wife are visiting them in prison. There's like a sense of frustration about the circumstance of certain aspects of what it's like to grow up in the inner city. Not all aspects, because some of it, if I was to be honest with you, much of it for me that I found as an entrepreneur anyway, is that it's contributed to like what I like to describe as an unfair advantage on my part. Like earlier on, I said it in passing, but I was like, because of the estate where I grew up, it kind of forced you to be able to relate to all people, all types of people. I lived in a tower block. the 6th floor. I don't know why the council did it like that, but it's like there was a lot of Iranians and Albanians all on one floor. Do you get me? But you're chopping it up with them, and then you're going, and then I don't know, honestly, I think on the 2nd floor, we had a lot of the Somali community. Like there was a variety of people. And then as an entrepreneur, there's a variety of people that you have to relate to, you know? So all of these things that's helped. So I think it's that ability to like reframe some of these experiences, I think. And then it's easier said than done, but actually when done well, it can be massively valuable, I think. Yeah.
Let's talk about your experience working in the pre-referral units. And on that, taking it back a little bit to your concepts of support and challenge.
That's it.
Do you feel like the students are ended up in that particular environment? Were they lacking the support, and the challenge?
That's good. It's a really good question, man. Trying to think, man. It's hard to give a catch-all because every student's experience is so unique. The students that arrived where I was working in the Peru, while they were there, did they receive support and challenge? I would say yes, in varying degrees. I would say like there was an amazing food tech teacher who actually wasn't a qualified teacher, but she didn't play games, you know, that like you couldn't really play about in her food tech lessons, you know. She taught them such an amazing life skill that there's a respect that comes when someone's taught you how to cook a meal that you can now cook at home, and you've cooked it in a lesson and you get to walk home with it and you can eat it or share it, you know. So there was a respect that she fostered, but I would say that was definitely contributed to her ability to just bring both support and challenge. You didn't rant with her. You didn't rant with Rosie. She would tell you about yourself. You didn't play around. So what was really interesting is that for some of them that might get reintegrated into mainstream school or go into other pathways, what was quite common is that after a couple of years, they will come back to the Peru and they'll be chatting small talk. And then before you know it, where's Rosie? Is Rosie here? And then I'll go and spend a decent amount of time with Rosie. And I would say, because of her ability to bring both support and challenge. But again, everyone's got different preferences and different tendencies that for some of us, we might bring challenge and support more naturally. Most of us kind of lean to one particular side, and through being aware, you're able to kind of think, how do I, balance it out in a way that's effective? But I would say in the Peru that I was in, I would say, I think they did a decent job. If I was pressed to say where the preference was, I'd definitely say it was more support. But I would definitely say challenge was present as well, but it was more support. Yeah.
Well, I guess maybe in the Peru, you'd have that aspect of like the support and the challenge, but then the circumstances that lead to the students getting in the first place, you feel like it was, and I don't like putting the blame on the parents.
That's it. Yeah.
Really not a fan of that kind of thing. But do you think there was an aspect of them lacking that kind of support and challenge at home, or within the school system that they were in before, in their environment?
It's good, man.
Is it that the string theory? There was the string theory. Strange theory. Yeah. So is it something like that? No positive role model, negative role model come to life? Is it, I guess, a combination of a number of different things? But I wonder if there's like some kind of a common thread that ties all of those students together.
That's a key thing. I think there is a reality in which, a lack of support and challenge from significant adults in your life definitely plays a part. I think if we were to look at it through the strain theory lens, that was present in most of like the students and some of the staff. Like that was life basically. I was still living on Andover and going to work. Do you get me? That was still life. It's a mixture, isn't it? I definitely think there is a reality that all of these things play a part, unfortunately, And I think creating spaces for students to pause and reflect and untangle some of these things. Like we just love doing that in the scope, basically.
Yeah. I feel like I've got to take it forward a bit because I was originally not planning to spend too much.
That's all right. That's absolutely fine. Yeah.
I'm like, it's so interesting talking about all this, your early work and everything like that. And I love hearing about everything. Like, it's good to set that foundation and to learn a hell of a lot.
That's all good. That's all good.
But we take it forward a little bit. Talk about some of the work you're doing now.
Yeah.
So we can get some of that as in as well, because you're doing some great work on Interscope, and I respect it, man.
Thank you
so
so
we should spend some time talking about that. One thing I read about that you do with Interscope is that you wrote it down. Let me see. You reconnect professionals to their why. So I'm guessing that's the schools and everything you work with. How do you do that? Yeah, how do you do that? And also flipping it back to talking to them, because I feel like sometimes, from a personal perspective anyways, it's easy to tell people like, you know, to advise people do this, do that, but it's not always as easy to continually remind yourself of the advice you're giving someone else.
Oh, of course.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because you can tell them, but it's sometimes without someone telling you, you realize, oh, you're just in emotion of it, living day to day. So that, how do you get these people to reconnect with their why in the first place? And then you as an individual, how do you personally reconnect and with your own why on a continual basis in the work you're doing?
I hear that. That's a great question. So I'll start,
and also actually, for people that don't know what Interscope is.
For people that know. Yeah, that's the point. So Interscope is a coaching company. We're a coaching company and we work with learners and leaders nationwide. It started off with a couple of secondary schools close to Andover Estate, and now we work with like we worked with schools in like Qatar, online, Spain. We cover a lot of the UK though, a lot of driving basically. but in terms of in-person work, we're nationwide, and but we do like, you know, international stuff online. Core aspects of our work around leadership development, team communication, and applied emotional intelligence for both learners and leaders. And to your point around the question around the why, how we do that with staff, I think it's important, isn't it? I think it's important to create space for professionals that are in a very like laborious, like working with teachers. You know, my wife was a teacher for 7 years. So I had firsthand experience of like, you know, walking alongside a teacher. And actually she used to head up what effectively was a pupil referral unit for the last 2 years of her teaching. And it's a labor of love, and actually super hard and difficult. And, you know, sometimes it can be thankless. But the role that amazing teachers play in the life of students is amazing. It's like, it's invaluable. I can pinpoint as an underachiever, like quite a professional, I was an excellent underachiever as a student, but you remember those professionals that kind of got you to see beyond how you were showing up. Like, you can't forget that. So for me, because I've been on the receiving end of that, I have a tangible experience of its significance. So with that being said, it then means that I'm able to help professionals reappreciate what it was that drove them to what they're doing in the first place, basically, in a role and in a space where actually it can be quite thankless, basically. So we do it through coaching, we do it through keynotes with staff teams. For myself, again, I feel like, I don't know, I think definitely my formative years, like, my thing is trying to switch it off. Do you get what I'm trying to say? It's not really trying to reconnect with it. Yeah. It's trying to dial it down and be present, because I'm super passionate about what I do. I love what I do. And I find so much joy in what I do. And I've applied myself to learning core competencies in what I do. So it means that it works quite well. It's hard for me to switch off, my wife would definitely say. Do you get me? So, yeah, so that's a key thing in terms of, like, for me, I don't find that I struggle with being connected to my core drivers, to be honest. Life is life though, things get hard, but usually that's not really my issue, to be honest with you, because I feel like I'm in my sweet zone, basically, if I was to be honest. Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. I guess when you find that thing you're passionate about, then then there's no stopping you. In fact, you got to try and tone it down.
If I was to be honest, yeah, totally.
Yeah. Like, what role do you feel storytelling has to play in driving positive change?
That's a massive question. That's the whole podcast in itself. The role of storytelling is
you talk about storytelling quite a bit.
I do. I'm Ghanaian. My uncle, I've got like at one point, I've just got a particular uncle, man, and like, there was always to say this, to say to say that. He would say it like this, you know.
Yeah.
But as a Ghanaian, man, we don't rap with stories. So I think culturally, that's just kind of in there. And then but then I came to learn as well that, you know, based on a neurological level, there's amazing things that happen when stories are being told, which make them inherently engaging. So, but to your question in terms of what is the role that storytelling can play in terms of shifting things, driving changes, it's massive, because actually we frame meaning on stories. We frame meaning, like practical one is like, I've got a son who's like, he's like a little Einstein sort of thing. Like a month ago, no, about 3 months ago, I came down the stairs. He's like, Dad, do we have any? He's 4 now. He would have been 3 at the time. He's like, Dad, do we have any hydrogen peroxide? He's like that. He's like that. He's one of those who will tell you how the names of the moons on Mars, like he's on all of that sort of stuff. So his mum and I, we decided to get him a Rubik's Cube, and I decided to get one too. So we'll both learn at the same time. So I'm looking at a YouTube tutorial, and I was struggling. I've been struggling. But there was one tutorial where the way in which they're teaching how you can do a Rubik's Cube is through story. So you've got this, and you've got a daisy, and the daisy gets blown away, and then there's these rabbits, and you've got to connect the And as this man's telling me this simple story, I'm looking at this complex Rubik's Cube, but it's starting to make sense in terms of how I should perceive it and the role I can play in order to get to where I want to go. And I think stories do the same thing, just on a wider scale. They've got a way of inviting us to perceive things in a particular way, and the role that we can play in terms of where we want to go. And I think that, like, in leadership, in community organizing, in a variety of spheres, that's a big deal. Yeah.
It's amazing. Based on your experience of all the work you've done with young people through Interscope, through your work before, everything like that, what do you feel schools and people that work with young people can be doing better than we're doing right now to better support young people?
Great question, man.
To set them on a better path and set them up for more success moving forward.
As someone that runs a coaching company, like, I'm going to say coaching. Like, I can't lie. I think coaching is, when done well, it's just amazing. And what we see in terms of the journey that young people go on and what they say when our coaches have gone in and like really like listened to them, challenged them, supported them, and really reminded them of like their agency and the possibilities that are available to them. Like, it's priceless. So I think creating spaces where students are challenged actually to reflect and equipped with tools that help them navigate, I think is massive. But that being done in a collaborative way, I think is important. You know, I think they say I can do something to you, I can do something with you, basically. And I think doing it with, I just think it's just a bit more, it just facilitates a bit more autonomy and agency for students and young people. So I think wherever there's space for a coaching approach to be incorporated on a day-to-day level, I think it's going to be healthy for the students on the other side of that. Yeah.
That's nice, man. That's nice. And we've got to wrap up soon.
That's all good.
So as we're preparing to wrap up, final question for you. What advice would you give to other Black British social entrepreneurs, change makers, people who are looking to do good work in their lives and their communities? What advice would you give them?
That's a great question, man. I think that's another... I would definitely say... there's so much I could say. I'm literally genuinely trying to think where to start. I feel like, if I was to be honest, for me, what we do, I would like to say that part of my secret sauce, if I was to be honest with you, is love. Like, if I'm thinking I'm going to create a new concept or a coaching journey for a young person or a staff team, and I'm literally thinking to myself, if that young person was my child, if that young person was my niece, my nephew, what would I want them to experience that's going to add genuine value? And then I create from that place. I've just seen that it resonates really well. So that's important. Loving what you do, loving your craft, I think forces you to want to be really good at what you do. Once you've done that, it sets you up, because now the issue isn't about what you're offering now. It's about distribution. How can I effectively distribute the thing that I'm offering? If the thing that I'm offering has been attended to with diligence, passion, then now I've got a solid thing. Now I'm having another conversation about how I distribute it. So there's that. A massive thing I would say is please read E-Myth from Michael E. Gerber. That's an important, I would say from a Black British perspective, super important, because many of us are amazing technicians and amazing professionals in our craft, but that doesn't necessarily translate as running a business. And there's different competencies that are required, basically. And so with that particular book, he just breaks down the distinction. It's called the E-Myth because he's saying that everyone calling themselves an entrepreneur is really a myth. You're an entrepreneur when you can step back from your business and it can still work without you. And for many of us, we spend so much time functioning in a way where if I bang my toe and I need to be in bed, I'm not going to be able to feed my family. I don't see that as a loving thing to do for my family. So it forced me to say, I need to make sure that this thing can function without me. So that book, there's many others, but that book for me, absolute game changer. And when I deal with, like brothers and sisters in my community that are starting the journey of business, put it this way, if I've told you about the E-Myth, it's come from a loving place. It's like me saying, this game changer here, please. So that's what I would say. I can be here for a very long time. And, I would say read the E-Myth. That's what I would say.
Nice one. Appreciate it, man. Thank you for coming down, dude.
Absolute pleasure. And love what you're doing. Keep on doing your thing. Absolutely amazing, man.
Thank you, man. Before
it,
we wrap up, if people want to keep up to date with you and the work you do, how can they best do so?
So our website is www.innerscope.co.uk, and that will that will show you about the work that we do in the education sector. I'm very, very active on LinkedIn. So if you just type in James Aidoo, Aidoo, then you'll find me there. And those are kind of like the main places you'll find me. Yeah.
Cool. Nice one. So thank you for coming on once again.
Pleasure.
Appreciate you coming on, people. If you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe. It helps us a hell of a lot. We're trying to get 1,000 inspirational changemakers, social entrepreneurs onto this podcast and essentially change the world. Get these positive stories out there as far and wide as we can. So please do subscribe, like, share, and tell your friends you share too to subscribe, like, share with their friends as well. And let's get more positive stories out there. But that's that for now. This is 1,000 Voices. We had James Aidoo on the podcast.
Thank you.
And for now, people, we're out.
Thank you.